Good afternoon. On behalf of the Center for Community Progress, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. My name is Julia Zimmerman, and I serve as the Program Officer for Education, Leadership, and Engagement here at Community Progress. I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C., and I encourage you to share your name and where you're signing in from in the chat. Community Progress webinars equip participants with the building blocks to understand and solve tough challenges related to property vacancy, abandonment, and deterioration. For today's webinar, we're joined by Christopher R. Rogers, co-coordinator at Friends of the Tanner House, and Kevin Upshur, founder and president of the Strawberry Mansion Learning Center. Before turning it over to our speakers, I want to mention that we will allow time at the end of the presentation to answer questions. If you have a question during the presentation, please submit them via the Q&A box below. We will share presentation slides and a video recording of today's presentation in the week following. If you experience any technical difficulties, please send an email to Julia Zimmerman at jzimmerman@communityprogress.org. And with that, I will turn it over to Chris and Kevin.
Thank you so much, Julia. Really excited to be here today. Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Rogers, co-coordinator of Friends of the Tanner House. Before I pass it to Mr. Kevin, I'll say, I'll throw a special thing to the chat and say, if you recognize any of the books that are behind us, just from the spine alone, let us know in the chat. It means something to me. But other than that, let me introduce Mr. Kevin, because we're here at the Strawberry Mansion Learning Center.
Hi, I'm Kevin Upshur, director of the Strawberry Mansion Learning Center. We've been working in the community for over 20 years. We've been doing a lot of after-school work and mentoring with young kids. And our mission statement is to provide a safe place for kids to learn and grow. We've been working in collaboration with the Tanner, Friends of Tanner, to actually make that connection so our young people know who Oswald Tanner was and all the great work that he accomplished right here in this community. So it's an honor for me to be here, and I'm looking to learn as much as I can as well from you.
Yes, so we do have a slideshow, and actually a note on accessibility that we also made the slideshow available. If you go to the resources section of your webinar, I'm sure Julia could also help if you need help telling where to find it. But we're going to get our slideshow started. The goal is to do about 35, 40 minutes of a presentation, and then have an opportunity to really discuss anything that comes into the Q&A. But I do have the chat up. So if there's clarity things that come through, please put that in the chat so that we can move it into the conversation. But Julia, is there anything folks should know about the resources, finding the resources page?
Yeah, if you just look at that little bottom bar on your webinar feed, there should be a tab that says resources, and you can view all the resources we're going to share today, including our speaker bios. And if anything else pops up, we can throw more in there. Got
you. And shout out to Tyler Ray. I see you in the chat, one of our Friends of the Tanner House board members. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, Julia, for getting us started. We can go ahead and move on to the next slide. So to kind of begin our story from the beginning of the organizing, at least for the Henry Ossawa Tanner House. So what we see here is 2908 West Diamond Street. It is known or registered as a National Historic Landmark, known as the Henry Ossawa Tanner House. Henry Ossawa Tanner being sort of accredited by the Smithsonian as the most accomplished African-American artist of the 19th century. He spent his teenage years, adolescent years in his house, which is formerly his father's house, and was recognized as a National Historic Landmark in 1976. It has still always operated as a mostly residential house. The neighborhood also informed us of the times that it operated as a community speakeasy, which we enjoy, because it says something that the house was always that became a space for the community to gather. And finding ways that how can we hold on to that in the history that we do. But the organizing around this house, as folks can kind of see this L&I or yellow sticker on the window, which was placed in a mid to late 2021. It alerted a number of neighbors, as well as, a number of preservation advocates all who happen to be Black women, by the way. So you have Karen Warrington, a longtime journalist, and oh, shout out to Sharon. Shout out to my hometown, Chester. Okay, sorry. Back to the point. We have Karen Warrington. We also have Valerie Russ, who works at the Enquirer. Deborah Gary, who's the sort of like founder of Society to Preserve Philadelphia's African American Assets. We also have Jackie Wiggins, who's been doing historical tours of the African American heritage in Philadelphia for a number of years. And there was also Judith Robinson, who's a longtime neighborhood advocate within this sort of like Strawberry Mansion area. And there was a article that Valerie Russ put together for the Enquirer around, we cannot lose this house. And what does this history mean? I was over at the Paul Robeson House Museum over in West Philadelphia, was, building up resources and work over there, kind of doing very similar to what you see as a trajectory here. And we said, well, there has to be a way to partner these things, right? Or find a way for these things to collaborate and build off one another's work. So the conversation started amongst us all, and we started a campaign. We were able to get in touch with the owner, Michael Thornton, who's the descendant of the sort of former owner, Robert Thornton. It's a whole story of tangled titles and, working through heir properties, which I'm sure we can talk about more, that many of the communities that are probably represented on this call are also working through. And the first call was saying, we want to do something about this house. We want to make sure that we do not lose it. It had a hole in the roof. And we knew that needed to be changed ASAP. So we started a fundraiser. We raised about $25,000 in that initial fundraiser, which was incredible to me over, about 3 to 4 months, but certainly not enough to be able to really attend to the house's needs. And then but out of all those relationships and connections and community conversations, we were able to build up a really strong base and bring on partners such as the Philadelphia Museum of Art, such as the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. Philadelphia Museum of Art was the first major museum to purchase Henry Ossawa Tanner's work. He graduated himself from the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. We also had a partnership with the University of Pennsylvania, which Sadie Tanner Mazel Alexander, Henry Ossawa Tanner's niece, who was born and raised in this house, attended. Penn Design in particular, and their preservation studio offered us a lot of help. And through these relationships, and we have to mention our fiscal sponsor, the Preservation Alliance of Greater Philadelphia. Like through all these relationships and connections, we were able to really build a base to think about what the future of this house would become. And I think from there, it became, an important story, not just about saving this house, but a story about Black heritage preservation in general in Philadelphia. And we recognizing ourselves at a turning point when so many of our sort of working class Black communities are under threat. So that's really how we have come together. Mrs. Kevin need to take a step for a second, but I'm going to ask him for a minute to talk about the context of the Strawberry Mansion neighborhood, because I think that is also important. It's a neighborhood that he was born and raised in. But yeah, that's how we started in 2021. We kind of become Save the Tanner House or Friends of the Tanner House as a formal organization, saying that we're going to take stewardship for the long-term prosperity of this house in about 2022. Became a nonprofit in 2023, and we're still working on building up this house. Right now, the house we have it all shored up. The house is stable. It's waterproof. We actually had to build a new wall. The L&I violation is gone. It's stabilized. And now we're working on a process, bringing on, we have an RFP that is available online, savethetannerhouse.org, to bring in a design group to think about the redesign of the house, just to give you an infrastructural update of where things are. Oh, next slide, please. So here's and I'll try to be quick about this, the Tanner family. So Henry Ossawa Tanner is in the top left. But this is really his father's home, right? Who's sitting in the center. His name, Reverend Benjamin Tucker Tanner. He eventually becomes a bishop of the AME Church. Folks know about Philadelphia, they may know about Mother Bethel AME Church. and it's the sort of first church of the AME denomination, African Methodist Episcopal Church. It is also, by many accounts, the longest held single piece of real estate, of land, held by Africans on these lands. And it's a church community. Reverend was recruited to the church not only to serve in a faith position, but also to run the Christian Recorder, which was the AME church's newspaper. So not only did he cover the historical struggle, like the sort of like the growth of the church, particularly at a time of Reconstruction, post-Civil War, in the country, but also the Black historical struggle, right? As folks were building and thinking about the type of institutions to claim, like to defend their newly won freedom. So that's Bishop in the middle. To his right is Henry's mother, Sarah Elizabeth Miller Tanner. So the house is currently owned. Thank you, Mila, for that. I'll talk about that in the Q&A. But the title situation is something we're going through, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But on the right is Sarah Elizabeth Miller Tanner. Sarah Elizabeth Miller Tanner was the sort of like first lady of the church. She ran the Sunday school at the church. She also was a Black woman who graduated from college. She ran the finances for the family. So she was, certainly someone of accomplishment in her own right. To their left, the bishop's left, is Haley Tanner Dillon Johnson, who was recruited personally by a family friend, Booker T. Washington, to start the nursing school at Tuskegee Institute. And another person I'll just briefly mention is all the way to the right. And that is Sadie Tanner Mazel Alexander's mother, Mary Louise Tanner. She eventually marries Aaron Mazel being the first Black male, to graduate from University of Pennsylvania Law School. So the family has always been on the front line of accomplishment, integrating many institutions here in Philadelphia. And there's a very long legacy, and it's still a long unfolding story that we have yet to fully wrap ourselves around here at the Friends of the Tanner House. But they were all born and raised in Strawberry Mansion. So if we go to the next slide, we'll talk about a little bit about the family, right? So this is one of Henry Ossawa Tanner's most famous paintings, the Banjo Lesson. I hope many people are familiar with it. If you are, let us know in the chat. But the Banjo Lesson, which was made in 1893, and as the family tells us, it was made while Henry lived at 2908 West Diamond Street. And it's really an ode, right? 1893 is an ode to family traditions, to Black family traditions. I hope, has anyone seen Ryan Coogler's Sinners? Please go see that movie, because I think that movie also, with the context of this painting and the context of that movie, it just makes it so timely. And I wrote about this for our report, which you'll, see also in the resources, right? But I'll just read it out, right? The banjo at the center of this painting, shared between the old and the young, suggests the continuance of an abundant Black blues tradition, of recognizing how the everyday creative power of Black music, often maligned by overseers and outsiders as nothing but noise, served as a communicative platform of secretive histories and ancestral survival guidance. The banjo lesson might be otherwise rendered for us as a metaphorical tribute to the sharing of ancestrally rooted creative practices from one generation to the next that may help us all get over, get by, and get clear once and for all that we as a people are unavailable for servitude. So that tradition is something I think you'll see wrapped throughout this entire presentation. And it certainly speaks to the legacy of a number of families and everyday folks here in Strawberry Mansion. So if we go to the next slide, I'll let Mr. Kevin talk a little bit about the legacy that he's experienced in this neighborhood. As you can see from this wonderful drone shot of Strawberry Mansion in the context of Philadelphia.
Well, I grew up in Strawberry Mansion. I've lived on several streets. I think about it sometime. My family lived in actually 2100 block of Stanley Street, and then we moved to actually Natrona Street, Hollywood Street. I know some of these streets you guys may not know, but they're all right in this proximity. And we had a business, we had a family business, which was a beer distributor years ago. My dad had on Ridge Avenue. That's like a main street or highway in the area. And he operated actually a beer distributor, and then he bought the bar. The family bought a bar that we're sitting in the building now. And as time went on, things changed. My mother passed away, so we put together, she said, we had to do something. So what we did was we decided to work with youth in the community. That's something that I always, always did, through recreation centers and just throughout the community, just always had a knack to talk with young people. And so, we started out here with just books, and then a friend came along and he said, hey, we want to do a pilot program of working with African-American boys, and we have some computers. Once we leave, you can have the computers. So we started after that to, after school program and computer classes, and started offering all kinds of things, even without a grant. And that's why, I realized that, everybody's pretty much grant orientated all the time, but it's a lot of things we can do ourselves. I'm a big component of saying, hey, let's do for ourselves. Let's get it going. Let's bring something to the table. And then we can, if we need other help, we'll take that help. But I think that for this community, the way I grew up, you were able to get a job as a young kid, a young African-American kid. Today that's changed. There's a Jewish community. It's a book called the Philadelphia, Strawberry Mansion Jewish Community. That's what it was called. And they wrote a book. And there were a lot of businesses during that time. And as the Jewish community moved out, they were African-American people bought businesses and homes and stuff. They were able to, if you worked in a store, you had an opportunity to buy it. And a lot of people did buy stores. And as time went on, the neighborhood got, violent in some sections. There were drugs in the community. And these are just things that I'm, speaking about that crossed my mind that always will be with me. I had a chance to experience a riot, and I didn't even know it was a riot. I was a little kid. I lived on the Trona Street, around York Street. They just came down and everybody was just tearing up the community, with the exception of one store. It was a record store, K. Williams. I never forget it. They never did anything to K. Williams record shop. And I always remember that. And I was like, well, what was that all about? So this area is, where I grew up. This is, thank God, this isn't all that I know. I know a lot more. And I was able to, from meeting different people and growing up and watching my people that were older than me get passports and travel and talk about Africa, talk about a lot of different places outside America that you should go see. So what we do here is we provide a safe space for kids to learn and grow, but we also give them a cultural experience. That's why this Friends of Tanner relationship is so important, because that's history that they need to know about, and maybe they can get encouraged from that. But overall, like I said, it's a lot of history in this community. We could talk about it all day. There's so many people that I know that I learned from that, I would love to have involved with this conversation, because it's a rich history. But at this point, it's really not the way it should be. It's like kids can't get a job like I did when I was growing up. I worked in the community. There were Black-owned businesses in the community. Everything now is different, and our kids don't get hired in the community. So they talk about the violence, but they don't talk about the fact that kids can't get a place to work in their own community. They don't see a lot of people in business that look like them. So it's kind of bleak. It's really the future looks bleak to a lot of them. So we have to be in our community to talk to them and uplift them and tell them that they're not chickens, that they're eagles. And once they can understand that they're eagles, they can fly. And I just know that the work that Chris is doing is amazing. And we welcome you, if you're not from Philadelphia, to come to Philadelphia and visit and see and hold some more conversations, and let's get an action plan together. Let's do something. Let's do something about it.
It's amazing. So just as Mr. Kevin talked about this investing in community, right? So we recognize that the house is not just an opportunity for like a brick and mortar renovation. We're also trying to revitalize some of these values, right? And how we spread them across generations. If you go back to the banjo lesson, it's not, it's so apt that the idea that during a riot, the Black music store was a space of protection, was protected, was defended by the community. That means a lot, right? It means that we have to protect our cultural spaces, right? And kind of building on that, we think about what we're attempting to protect is not just the house, or what we're attempting to defend is not just the house, but the ambitions and pursuits that the Tanner family represents. That's how we came up with this framework of faith, family, freedom, arts, health, and education. Because when we look at the Tanner family accomplishments, they really move across those different spheres. So rather than just thinking of the house as a museum where we're just reflecting on these historic legacies, we're thinking, how do we continue to activate newer and descendant generations of this community to engage in these efforts, to engage in these pursuits, to build up the type of community and cultural infrastructure that's necessary for us to transform our communities and to transform the world around us. Next slide. So you can kind of see more of our report here. It's 90 pages, 96 pages. It's a labor of love that was an outcome of a year-long process that was, sponsored by the Mellon Foundation alongside the Center for the Preservation of Civil Rights Sites. But I like starting here because one of the things that we found out in talking with some of the Tanner family, that there's just an amazing legacy here to this house. Dr. Carter G. Woodson once described Bishop Tanner's home, the home that we're working on, as the center of the African-American and intellectual community of Philadelphia and the Northeast United States. And one of the Tanner descendants, wrote this amazing sort of like tribute that really called us into our responsibility, right? The Friends of the Tanner House sits on the precipice of a momentous historic moment. They have awakened the knowledge of our material culture of North Philadelphia and the restoration of the home of the Tanner family. I view the Friends of the Tanner House as a beacon to further the ancestors' work. This is Dr. Ray Alexander Mentor, who is the daughter of Sadie Tanner Mazel and Judge Raymond Pace Alexander. I think in this time, in this climate, when so much of Black culture is under attack, is trying to be erased, that is trying to be maligned in the public, the responsibility that we have is so much more than just, preservation and placekeeping, right? It's really people-based, right? We're trying to reawaken people to this mission, to this work. And I really love that one of the Tanner family descendants saw that in our mission. So you can keep going. So how do we begin to operationalize our work? It begins with a tribute to, or, inspiration from June Jordan, amazing poet, activist, architect, if you will. And there's been a resurgence around her design work lately. But June Jordan, when she was working with Buckminster Fuller, an architect in the 60s in Harlem, says, we can't just talk about, revitalizing housing in Harlem. We had to talk about a solution for their entire social world. So she had, a question that she asked and how to do that work that we remixed, right? And the way that we put it was, what kind of community invitations, right, to collectively gather? And what kind of heritage preservation practices to collectively reflect? And what kind of educational spaces to collectively study? And what kind of healing narratives to collectively spread? And what kind of beautiful experiments to collectively organize makes love an easy, reasonable public response? This was kind of like a fit of poetry, if you will, to kind of get the project started. We needed to turn in a 5-page expedited application to the Mellon Foundation. So me, I'm always in some form of a book. I started there, and then we began to scale out. So if we go to the next page, you'll see how we begin to scale that out. So how do we begin to distill that poetic sort of like question into something that could be sort of like considered a community approach? At the core of it, right, was this question of what does it take for love to thrive in our neighborhood? And we sort of distilled those sort of like that long run on question into 6 different ones, right? We asked, what are activities we should do to gather us together? Who are the people that we should honor or celebrate? Right. Remember, this is always in the name of love, right? So, what activities should gather us together in love, right? Who are people that we should honor or celebrate? What history should we be learning about as a community? What activities should we organize to improve our neighborhood? And what stories should we share to help our community heal? This was a survey that we led at all of our activities that we did throughout the entire year. And it was a way of both saying we need to figure out a platform for what this house can become. But just as Mr. Kevin mentioned to us, it was also, oh yeah, it's in the slides too. So make sure you can go to resources and grab the slides. It's all in there. And the report as well has it all in there, Mary Lou. Oh, no, that's a response to something else. So good. Yeah, so what you see here is we did like a compilation of what came in through the surveys, the major themes. This was put together by Kayla Saunders, an intern with us. But these are some of the things that came out: storytelling, block parties, cookouts, sports, art, faith, care, fellowship, healing, and commemoration. These are all things that we were saying, this is what we want the house to embody once we're finished. But also, we don't have to wait until the house is finished to begin this work. So read more about this survey in the report, and we can go on to the next slide. One of the most amazing stories, and Faith Ringgold, a new ancestor of ours, right? She wrote a children's book. Mr. Kevin has used that children's book here with some of the young people. It focuses on this legacy of how do we get people to come into their purpose, right? So what this story represents, we're about 4 blocks from Fairmount Park. Fairmount Park begins on 33rd Street. The house is at 29th on 29th Street. And the Tanner family would regularly take walks to and through Fairmount Park. And Henry Ossawa Tanner writes about, how he learned that he wanted to become an artist. And he takes it back to this moment where his father is walking with him through Fairmount Park. And he comes upon an artist. Faith Ringgold depicts it as he's seeing himself, right? But he comes upon an artist in the park who has his canvas up and is painting a landscape. And Henry Ossawa Tanner says to his father that Dad, I think this is what I want to do with my life. I want to become an artist. And it's that moment, right, of not only seeing, family, of seeing inspiration, of seeing an affirmed purpose that really inspires our partnership with the work that Mr. Kevin does, right? He's someone who would represent Bishop Tanner in this image, right? Who is working with young people to show them, just all that they can be and all of what their potential is. So I really wanted to make this connection as we talk a little bit more about our partnership, our direct partnership with Strawberry Mansion Learning Center. So we can go on to the next slide. And that, is fitting that Mr. Kevin is wearing his Phillies cap today. Because as we talked about opening young people into their purpose and showing them opportunity and possibilities, that has been the legacy of Strawberry Mansion Learning Center. So our work in the community, right? As I said, like there's the infrastructure work of the house and we're working on it. We're continuing to raise resources and build funding, but it's also about making the case that the work that we do every day has meaning. And along the way, really, builds up into something strong. So this is an opportunity to go to a bit deeper into the work of Strawberry Mansion Learning Center. I don't know if you want to talk just a little bit more about any partnerships or other things that, the different exposure opportunities that come through this work and how it all sort of connects to building up the neighborhood.
Well, we were fortunate enough, we connected with the Phillies, and actually they called us because they saw us. We were on a trip at was it the Muhammad Ali training camp up in Deer Lake. We took some young people up there for the day, and so they posted us, and so then the Phillies contacted us because they saw us at Muhammad Ali's training camp. So a lot of the partnerships become natural because when people see that you're really working, we reach out to one another because you can actually see the work. So the Phillies reached out and we told them we needed a van. And you can see us there with the van in this picture. We were very excited. We've been using the van a lot. We've been taking the kids and giving them exposure to different cities, different educational opportunities. And it's just been a good thing. But it's a God thing that, it's these things happen because people may think that folks just give you stuff because you have a nonprofit and you're saying, I'm over here doing this. I think that what we've learned was you just keep doing the work regardless of what is being said about what you're doing, as long as you can see the results. And we've seen results, and these are just some of the younger kids that we've had, but we have kids, we've worked with kids up to the age of 18, some kids, when they get that age, they work as counselors for us. They become role models. So that's what we do. We work with them to keep, as they stay with us, and eventually they have an obligation to give back. So that's all we're doing is giving back, and we're looking to continue to do it. And, we're always looking for the kind of support so we can continue to do it because this is not a business where you make money. It's just a business where you save lives. So we've been fortunate. And like I said, we've had some news exposure. Valerie Russ has been a great person that we met with the Daily News. She actually put our story out, and we've gotten a lot of good friends that believe in what we're doing, and this is what we do. This is my life, and the partnership with the Tanner is another part of it because we reached out to one another, but we actually met during the time. We met through Judith Robinson.
Right.
And then we crossed each other's path as he continued to do the work, and he's serious. I'm serious. So we want to get it done, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and on a note of mentorship, I began to speed up. So if Julia, you could take me to the teen night slide. I think it may be about 1 or 2 slides after this. Yeah, so as Mr. Kevin mentioned about mentorship, Friends of the Tanner House was very helpful to be able to sponsor teen night here at the Strawberry Mansion Learning Center. Not just teen night, but the creation of the Teen Leadership Committee, in which you'll see the 2 leaders of that right here. Javon Sullivan, and a longtime volunteer and youth leader here at Strawberry Mansion Learning Center, as well as Salil Stewart, a dear friend of his who does, and they've partnered together to create the Teen Leadership Committee here. And we started with this idea of Teen Night, which is an opportunity to bring together young folks in the neighborhood, folks between the ages of 13 and 19, to really build up the opportunities for young people to engage in intergenerational mentorship here in the space. Oh, okay. It's all right. We got a guest here today. But the Strawberry Mansion Learning Center Teen Night has been an incredibly blossoming endeavor. We're only in our second, we just finished up our second one. So if you go to the next slide, Julia, you'll see, be able to see what's happening here. So this was last Friday, Friday night at about 9 o'clock where we're taking this image. As you can see, the multiple generations represented here. It definitely skews a bit to more of our Black boys, but we did have some girls come through. And it was a night where it was fun and games, activities in the courtyard, a movie shown, and a radio host. Hours for teen night are between 6 to 9. Mm-hmm. And the radio host gave the young people a charge, right, about how do you create intentional, uplifting peer relationships? How do you create spaces to rely on each other, right? How do you think about your futures together, right? And thinking about an education and a type of way of being in a community that is less about leaving the community, but about leading the community. And that was a really great conversation that was had, a really great activity. We're really thankful to Javon and Salil who organized that entire thing. I was just there eating popcorn and hot dogs most of the time. They did all the activities. So it was an awesome way to bring folks together. And I think it's important, another note is to say that the work that we do is about multiple generations, right? We're working with young people, down to like middle school and the work that Strawberry Mansion Learning Center does and trying to touch that work, to high school students and folks who are going on to college, to folks in the sort of like middle ages and, folks who are in their mid careers and trying to get engaged. We hosted law students here not too long ago. And then some of our seniors and elders. So if you go on to the next, you'll see an opportunity that was like really deeply about learning the history of the neighborhood, right? So on Saturday, we hosted Pass the Mic, a neighborhood storytelling event, which was about expanding the sort of like narratives of the neighborhood. As Mr. Kevin talked about, this place used to be a bar, a beloved neighborhood bar, has now transformed into a magnificent sort of like youth learning space. And we wanted to talk about the different spaces across the neighborhood and have an opportunity for folks to lift that up. So we created this whole story circle here at the Strawberry Mansion Learning Center to talk about those opportunities. I want to keep going because I'm just looking at time, and I just want to make sure we have an opportunity for Q&A. So I want to keep going, but this was an amazing event to sort of like share about some of the stories that came for that. So if you can go to the next slide, Julia. Yeah. So one of the special things about that event is we have a partnership with the Historic Preservation Studio at University of Pennsylvania School of Design. Jules Dingle is the leader of that class. They've been working on a project alongside the Friends of the Tanner House to think about how do we expand ourselves from just thinking about what the house is, which is the sort of like front row you see here, into a much wider story of how the work that we do at the house connects to the entire neighborhood. What are the different opportunity spaces and the green spaces and the other community organizations and local businesses that have connections here? And I love, community curator Darian Johnson took this photo. And I love that right behind the model of this house is who we do this work for, right? This is the next generation. We want them to be able to look at the sort of landscape of this neighborhood and begin to think about what it means to plan, engage, to think about the future of sustaining this space. So that it really means a lot that the work that we do is not tied up in these sort of ivory tower academic institutions. It's not at the sort of like city hall council room. It's in the neighborhood. It's on the street. Folks can walk in and get involved. And folks of all ages can see that. So the hours for Pass the Mic was from about 12 to 2:30. We did have youth participate. Some really amazing stories came through too, of young people who said, never really had a space to connect to the elders in my community. I've been in the house. My mom's been telling me it's safer to be there, but I really want to come outside more. And they were able to make it like a really sincere connection to the Strawberry Mansion Learning Center and say like, I feel safe here and here's a space that I can make connection. So we're really excited for Anthony to come back. We did not record this. Well, hold up. Andrew Karn, our former state representative, who now runs a public access TV show. He was here. He recorded some stories. But we didn't intentionally do it because they didn't want to put people on the spot. We wanted to give them a mic and have an opportunity to share. But we didn't want to feel like they had to, be correct, or practice or rehearse. We just wanted them to feel like they were sharing in community. So thank you for that. So as we kind of begin to wrap up here and make our way to Q&A. Yes. Oh, this is like paper. There's all like paper boxes, cardstock. I think they went to Google Maps and downloaded a lot of the sort of like front images and then printed those out and then scaled them onto the paper. It's a really interesting model. But Julia, can you go to the next slide? So here's some of the more activities that we've done here. We started with the MLK Day of Service, Martin Luther King Day, which was a great event. Right. The Any Day Now creative writing series that we do honoring another North Philadelphia legend, Larry Neal, a leader of the Black Arts Movement. So we have creative writing workshops. We're bringing in poets and writers here, working with young people on the weekends. And then we just I mean, not just, but maybe last month we hosted an event called Beyond the Vote, civic engagement. Also trying to expand civic literacies here in the neighborhood. And have folks not just think about who we are electing, but particularly just how these systems work. There's a lot that can be done just around understanding, civics on an everyday level. So please learn more about the Shaw Area Mansion Learning Center. We're going to have an opportunity for questions, but before we do, there's just one video that I have to share that has always been a sense of inspiration for me, and it comes from Detroit, the legacy of Grace Lee Boggs alongside James Boggs. Their legacy in Detroit has always hit home for me. So I think that's the next slide, Julia. Let's watch this video together, and then we'll go on to Q&A.
Grace Lee Boggs talking about Detroit.
From New York, where I had lived a good deal of my life and where I went to school, to Detroit, because I thought that the working class in Detroit was going to rise up and restore, reconstruct the city. And I arrived at a time when the population was beginning to decline, when the working class was shrinking, and I had to begin learning from what was taking place. And that learning process is something that a lot of people are undergoing. And I think it's very difficult for someone who doesn't live in Detroit to say you can look at a vacant lot and instead of seeing devastation, see hope. See the opportunity to grow your own food, see an opportunity to give young people a sense of process that's very difficult to get in the city. That the vacant lot represents the possibilities for a cultural revolution. It's amazing how few Americans understand that, even though I think filmmakers and writers are coming to the city and trying to spread the word.
Grace Lee Boggs.
Thank you to Grace. And to return back to the banjo lesson, she says filmmakers and writers, the creatives, the artists, the people who see the art and poetry of everyday life, or the people who are able to understand the possibility. I don't think that it depends on whether you can make a film, whether you're a published poet, but it is about recognizing the poetry of everyday life in the community. And that's what we do. And that's what all the books here, at Shaw Area Mansion Learning Center represent. So I'm really excited to go into conversation with you all and see what comes up. Maybe Julia, you could help me with the Q&A. And yeah, here's our, that last slide is just a bit of our mission statement.
Awesome. Yeah, we've had a couple of questions pop in. So let me go back to the top. Way at the beginning, Mia had asked about who owns the house. You said we'd get back to it, so let's get back to it.
Yeah, perfect. So the house, the Tanner family and the descendants of the house, the Alexanders, sold the house to the Thorntons in the 1950s. Robert Thornton was the sort of like lead that inherited the house. And we are working with Robert Thornton's direct descendant, Michael Thornton, very good friend of ours, someone who's believes in the project, is invested in the project. Right now, through the title process. And as anybody on here knows about the titling process, it is, it's a lot of, and I think some of it is important, right? Because particularly in Black communities, Black working class communities, there is, a long history and trends of title theft, of deed theft, in the ways that, that sort of like wealth of home ownership has been stolen from Black communities. And at the same time, it is a very extenuated, paperwork driven process. So we have a agreement with Dr. Thornton, and we're working with Dr. Thornton right now on the untangling title process. We're pretty close and we have some hope and momentum there. But as always, it's like court date after court date. Then you got to pay the lawyer to get the thing. So you can go to the next court date, then the register of wills, and the letters of administration, all those things, right? So we are dutifully and doing our due diligence, working with Dr. Thornton. We have an agreement in place that once the title process is clear, this transition of the ownership of the house will move from the Thorntons to Friends of the Tanner House as a nonprofit corporation. which we already have, set up and installed. And we're really excited about that. I think one thing I do want to note, right, in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, we have this thing called Act 135, it's a conservatorship policy. And just as we mentioned of like the transfer of wealth from Black communities, I think there's also something to be said about working directly with the family in this process. There's others who would say, well, why don't you just go through a conservatorship process and you can use that? It's a dilapidated house. You could just take the property from, and they'll just give it to you. And I don't want to reproduce those same, policies that have always been a way to dispossess Black families of wealth that has been built up. There is a fair market value for the property. We're working with the Thorntons to do that. And I really believe that, we should think about that process of putting the people first rather than just thinking that we're going to just, claim a building from up underneath them because we see more potential in it than they do. That is a practice that I don't want to continue. But yeah, what else we got?
Absolutely. Well, that's a great segue actually to this next question. Up here, in what practical ways are you telling, recording, and preserving the history of your community? And is there a physical or digital archive that people can engage with?
There's a lot of things there. So there's a lot of different opportunities there. So I would say at this point, we are indexing the different archives and resources that have pieces and pages of our community history. So one of the people that you see behind us, if you know this one, it's a deep Black Philadelphia fact. That's Charles Blockson, his image up here, the Blockson collection at Temple University. Charles Blockson himself is from Norristown. He's probably one of the most foremost collectors of African-American ephemera in this country. A number of his artifacts are on display at the National, Black History Museum in DC. The Blockson collection is what, 15 blocks this way,
Right, but also the blockchain collection is here. We're like another part of the Blockson collection, like a satellite for the Blockson. So we've been collecting a lot of their books for a long time. Kids come in and do research, and we're in the process of doing the second floor so that we can bring more of his books in. So we're definitely a satellite for the Blockson, but I just wanted to say that we don't have to go far. We're right here as well.
Yeah, and then there's the Temple Urban Archives, which has a lot of Philadelphia history. There is the Alexander Family Archives, which is a repository of Tanner family history. There's Henry Ossawa Tanner's Archives, which is the Smithsonian has those. So there are a lot of different opportunities, and we are still very much so on the front end. Carter G. Woodson's, organization, Asala, their journal, they wrote an article about the Tanner family tree. The Tanner family was so accomplished that they had to do a part 1 and part 2 over 2 different issues of the journal. We are still in the process of documenting that entire legacy. But it's a great question. But I think the idea is like beginning to map all these different spaces. And I haven't even gotten to like neighborhood history yet, right? Like there's still just so much everyday stories, everyday legacies. Somebody, even on the walls of Strawberry Mansion Learning Center, you have someone like Cecil B. Moore. A lot of young people don't even know. Well, I hope they know. Do they know? Columbia Avenue is like a main street in North Philadelphia. It used to be called Columbia Avenue. Now it's called Cecil B. Moore Avenue because of Cecil B. Moore's legacy as an activist and organizer in this neighborhood. Cecil B. Moore's legacy is very rich in this neighborhood. Vernon Marks is another community sort of like, they call him the chief, So these legacies are all present. So it's also about how are we documenting these everyday stories, which are more in the collective memory of the neighborhood rather than quote unquote, professionalized historic archives.
I'm scanning through some of these next questions real quick. One quick question that I can answer. Someone asked if we can share contact information. Chris and Kevin, if you guys are good with it, in the follow-up email, we'll include your emails. So you guys are more than welcome to reach out once we send that out. I was wondering, actually, selfishly, if I can ask a question, if you'd be able to share more about some of your artist residencies and the specific collaborations that you're doing to bring arts into the community.
Yeah, so the arts community has been all out and through this project. When we did the community engagement, the community visioning process, we might have had about 40 different collaborators of different forms of community-based art. And the work that we've done to kind of build on that, we have the idea of like an artist residency program, and we have sketches that we would love to, in the renovation of the house, have a space for our artists in residence. So that's like a fundraising goal and a renovation goal as we move through. But up until this moment, what we've been building up is what we call the Friends of the Tanner House Community Educator and Teacher and Artist Index. As I spoke earlier about like faith, family, freedom, arts, health, and education, we have a community partner network of organizations across the 19121 and 19132 zip codes who are engaged in pursuits across that work. The work of the Community Educator and Teacher and Artist Index is how can we support those organizations to do interesting, engaging activities with their communities across many different ages, to bring folks together. So who's on that sort of like index now? You have like Tali Seren, a Haitian artist and performer, guitarist, who works at the Village of Arts and Humanities, another sort of like youth space on the other side of Broad Street. You have Kerwin Sutherland, an amazing veteran Philadelphia poet who helps us with our creative writing series and recruits a number of poets there. Then you also have somebody like Duji Machinda, who leads Vinyl Tap 215. And the beautiful thing about that is not only is it a collective of DJs, but Duji has a van. And Duji's van, particularly as a DJ, he also has the sound equipment. So he is not only the DJ for many events all across Philadelphia, but he's also the guy that when you need a sound system delivered, you hit up Duji and he'll bring the system with you. So it's also about having those ingredients, right? Like I talk about the storage for the Tanner House, right? And the basement storage, similar to what we were doing at the Robeson House. Like having 6-foot tables available for community events, having at least 30-something chairs available for community events, having a PA system with microphones. And I think I'm working on now is how to get a bouncy castle. Because those bouncy castle houses are like a block party in itself. You bring one of those, you bring the tables, you'd say it's a potluck style, somebody's gonna bring a grill, bring some people out, and then you have an opportunity for a community forum on any block, any neighborhood, all across the street.
Awesome. Okay, I think we have time for probably 1 or 2 more questions. This is a great one. Can you speak on the future vision for interrelatedness between the Strawberry Mansion Learning Center and the Tanner House?
Yeah. You start there.
Well, I think that, we've started it already. Our kids have visited the site, where Tanner grew up. We've been reading the book about how he grew up. We're just in the process now of taking them, around a little more through the city to show them, where his artwork is on display and the importance of his work. We have an art class here now. Presently, we have a young artist named Sean. Actually, I call him Sean Artist, but this guy has done some great work. Actually, he's doing one on Tanner soon. He did a Dr. King piece. I don't know if you can.
I'll grab it, wait up.
It's all glass work that we're doing. And he's really a fantastic young man. And he comes here and donates his time. And this is the kind of stuff he's doing. And so the next one will be Oswald Tanner. Henry Ossawa Tanner is the next guy. So he's taking the kids through this process. And once they finish, everybody signs it because it's their work. And so we're looking to do more stuff, particularly around poetry, teaching these kids about who they really are, so they don't get it all, like they say, twisted. They understand that they come from a glorious past, and that, you know, like I said early on, they're eagles, not chickens. So I think this is the great partnership to do it, when you can make reference to Oswald Tanner, and you even show that one of my favorite is the banjo lessons. It's here in the building on the wall. Before me and Chris met, we've had it here, and we've always talked about it. And like I said, when Chris told you that the place used to be a speakeasy, we were going out to the place when it was a speakeasy, of course not to drink, but we stood in front of the place and took pictures because it was a marker out front. And everybody's looking at us like, why do you have these kids in front of the speakeasy? But they're not even looking at the marker and the importance of it. So when people like the Friends of Tanner, who are educating people about who he was, I mean, along with Paul Robeson, and there's so many great people. We have throughout this community where it's just dust on these markers. So I think that it's going to be a wake-up call, and kids will pay more attention to these markers and know that they're important. So I think it's just an extensive relationship. It'll go on and on. I think that I joke with Chris sometime and say, once the Tanner House is open, we'll have activities going at both places, and people say, well, I'm going to the Tanner, I'm going to the Strawberry Mansion Learning Center, and we're just going to have a ball in Strawberry Mansion. And Strawberry Mansion is, to me, the Harlem of Philadelphia. It's one part of, you know, it's really like, I love Harlem, I like New York. So when I go there, I always go to Harlem, I want to go to Brooklyn. So we need to make this, and it already is, it's ready. We just have to do the work, and I think that's what we're doing now. And I'm looking forward to doing more.
Yeah, and the beauty is doing it with the people who are already here, who are already doing the work. One of our board members used to be a bartender at that speakeasy. You know what I mean? So
Wow.
it's seeing the, you know, the connection, and bringing our people along with us, right? That there's a way in which, to kind of come to a close here, there's a way in which, you know, the transformation of a neighborhood becomes a transformation of the properties and the infrastructure, but not the people. And the work that we do at the Friends of the Tanner House is about people in place, right? So we're staying with the people, right? And we're creating opportunities for us to grow and learn and transform ourselves and our neighborhood together, rather than thinking that our help is coming from outside. We win from within.
I mean, I don't think there's a better way to close. Thank you guys so much for being here. I know I'm constantly inspired by the work you guys are doing, and I hope everyone in the audience is too. I encourage everybody to check out the resources, join the mailing list of both of these wonderful organizations, and keep up with them. I know someone mentioned earlier in the chat, the scope of this project is so massive, and you guys have like barely touched, I feel like, on everything you do. So definitely go check out their websites and learn more about them. I want to give a special thank you to the Kresge Foundation for helping to fund this webinar. And thank everyone for joining. Kira, if you could drop the survey link in the chat just one more time, if you all could fill out just a quick survey telling us about your experience on this webinar, we'd really appreciate it. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.